teachers. I'm Haley Huberty. I'm the Professional Development Manager here at Creative Learning Systems. We're so excited that you are looking at our curriculum to use with your students to engage them in digital learning. I'm going to show you a little bit about how to use our curriculum with upper elementary students, so that's students in 3rd through 5th grade, using our curriculum we call Lift-Off Challenges. So when you get to the Launchpad, you're going to log in. The username is going to be e-learning and the password is 2020. Luckily, that's going to be pretty simple for your 3rd through 5th graders to enter in. So that's also the username and password that they will use to access the curriculum. When you first log in, you're going to see a bunch of different circles, and each of these circles represents a different group of curriculum. So the activity cards is what we use for kindergarten through 2nd grade learners. It can also be used to support students who need some more scaffolding. Express challenges are quick challenges. They are at an appropriate reading level for 3rd through 5th grade learners, and they're not quite as complex as the lift-off challenges. So depending on the needs of your students, the amount of time you have, that is something that you could assign to some students. Lift-off challenges is where most of the curriculum is going to live for this grade level band. And then the last node that you're likely going to use is the orientation node. This is actually where more resources are for you. So if you click on the digital learning topic, there are resources here to get started. This first one has some information about preparing students to use our curriculum, guidelines for primary learners and elementary learners, which is what your students would be using. So we set up a score, which is essentially our scope and sequence. So it's the activities that students will be doing in the order potentially that they might be doing it. It also includes the technology they'll use and the titles of the curriculum that correspond with that technology. There are some notes here, so I would recommend reading through here. If you're also supporting secondary learners, then there's some information there. Also in this digital learning section, we have all of our digital learning webinars that we held the week of March 16th. So if you missed those, you can go back and check. I discussed a number of resources that can help with digital learning, best practices to keep in mind, and we also covered some theory in designing digital project-based learning and also using authentic assessment. So check those out. This last one is guiding students through setting up an e-portfolio using Google Slides. So this can be helpful because it does include the e-portfolio template that we recommend students use to document their learning. And I'll go through this a little bit more after I show you the curriculum. So back at the Launchpad homepage, I'm going to go into Lift-Off Challenges. And we organize all of our curriculum in 8 systems of technology. So that's kind of different areas in which the technology can be applied and how it might be used, like circuitry. So the technology we have there relates to circuitry concepts and helps students to build understanding of how electricity and circuits work. So I'm going to click on that one. This one is using Tinkercad Circuits, which is a web program. All of the ones we have on our elementary e-learning score use either web programs that are free or it's something that students can find around their house. One of the lift-off challenges has them build tessellations, and they could really use anything that's around them. Popsicle sticks, Q-tips, sticks from outside, anything they have access to, building materials that they already have. They have Legos or Connects because they just like building with those things. It's really open-ended to make sure that all students have access to something and can use it to complete the project. So once we click on the Lift-Off Challenge, it's going to bring us into the piece of curriculum. There's 4 tabs for every Lift-Off Challenge and every Express Challenge. So your challenge is presenting a challenge to the students. For example, this one is challenging them to use Tinkercad circuits to build and test circuits, and they're going to do that online. So it's going to be like a simulation. It's pretty open-ended, so students can decide how they want to build a circuit, what it might be used for. If they want to build a video game controller because they love video games, or if they want to create I don't know, some kind of sign for their room because they would love a sign for their door. It's really open-ended to give them freedom and allow them to be creative. The next section is called What You Should Know, and it's all the background information. And this is going to be related to the actual technology they're using, but also to the content. So as you can see, it discusses circuits, it has vocabulary bolded, talks about the different components on Tinkercad circuits. Just to help them get started, our curriculum is also designed to be nonlinear. So if students read the challenge, jumped right into doing their project, and then got stuck, the hope is that they then navigate back to the What You Should Know section. But of course, it's up to you and how you want to structure it. If you want your students to read the What You Should Know section first, then you just require that. You can break this down into multiple different days, and that's what the 5-step journal has done. So I'll go through that to show you how you can break it down. But just know that it's pretty flexible and how you can have students move through it. The Do It section is steps to get started, so it leads them through creating an account, going through the tutorials, and then building and testing their own circuit. So usually in the liftoff challenges, it will kind of give them one to get started and then ask them to move forward and create their own. So it's giving them scaffolding as they get comfortable, but then they can really go off and be creative on their own. The last section is the Extend Yourself section, and this is where students can take their projects to the next level. So that's applying what they learned in a different way. It may be doing some research about the topic, answering additional questions they have, etc. Maybe using their technology for a different purpose. So this is really good for those students who finish their project early or they have additional time and want to continue to learn with this technology. So those are the 4 sections that you'll see in every piece of curriculum, and the liftoff challenges or the express challenges. I now want to show you our project journal because our project journal matches our project cycle. In a SmartLab, which is what we call our learning spaces that we design and put in schools, students move through this project cycle for every project they complete and for every learning launcher that they use to support that project. So students spend time exploring. As you can see in our graphic, we've got that kind of mint green E. So they explore the technology. That's time where they can figure out how it works. They can start coming up with ideas of how they might want to use it. But it takes that problem solving and that kind of learning curve to figure out a new technology. That kind of happens in the beginning. And it's low pressure because all they're doing is exploring. I ask them, how does it work? What can you do with this? Those kinds of questions can help guide them as they go through the exploration. And so this second slide in their journal has them do that. So it asks some questions about that they should be thinking about as they explore, but it's also really good to have them start with jotting down some questions that they have. They may know a little bit about Tinkercad, but Tinkercad circuits is new to them. So they may ask, well, can I 3D print the components? Like have them generate some questions a little bit as they get started or before they get started. And then those questions can help guide their exploration. Then they would document what they learned about the technology and how it worked. The next phase in the process is planning. And that's really important to make sure that students are taking ownership over their project, customizing it to what's interesting to them, and just that they have a plan for moving forward. It gives them that purpose. So we have all of our students write a SMART goal. And a SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And there's an example there of what a SMART objective looks like. There's kind of below, I pulled out each of the components um, and how I answered those. And then the next page has them fill it in. This is something that would probably be really helpful to walk students through the first time. So maybe choose, if you guys want to do Tinkercad circuits together as a class, where everyone in the class is working on this liftoff challenge, and go through and create an objective, a SMART objective as a class. And then maybe, leave a little piece or kind of a blank in that SMART objective where they can customize it to what's important to them, to the kind of circuit that they want to create. That's definitely a piece that is challenging for students. And so the more that you can support them in that, the better they're going to end up turning out. The next phase in our project cycle is do and reflect. And we have it as kind of a combined two-step because as you're doing your project, you're constantly reflecting on how it's going, whether you need to revise your plan, whether you need to revise your design, all of that. We want kids constantly reflecting as they're working. So on this slide, as students are working on their project, they would document what they completed that day, what they learned, a challenge, and how they solved it. We focus a lot on problem solving, but again, this is a template that you can customize. So if there's different things you want them focusing on, like if you want them looking at measurement because you are reinforcing that concept with your student, then you could have it focused on, how they're using measurement to design their project or, to make a scale replica of something. So it's definitely customizable based on what you want to emphasize. So they would spend another day working on their project. Again, they are documenting what they learned and how they know that. So it could be about how a circuit works, and so then they need to share some evidence. And it also has them reflect on how they can use this outside of the classroom. So making those bigger picture connections and those real world connections. The last step, so this is kind of moving into the reflection and share piece. They would reflect on whether they met their objective, how they managed their time, how they collaborated with others, what they would change next time. These are all great questions to have them thinking about as they're wrapping up their project. And then the final phase in our project cycle is sharing. And as you can see, that's not on our slides because students don't share their learning in their slides, they share it with their peers or with their families or a relevant stakeholder or community group. So think about what's going to be most kind of important and powerful for your students. In the beginning, that may just be sharing on Flipgrid about, the most important part of their project or what they're most proud of or their biggest takeaway. Some way where they can share with their peers is going to be great, especially in this digital space and time when they may feel a little bit isolated from their peers and other kids their age. And so having some kind of platform where they can share and then comment on each other's is going to be really helpful. Keep them engaged, keep them excited, and feeling connected to everyone. So this template you can make a copy of, and then you can share it with your students. You can send it to them to download. You can assign it in Google Classroom. Whatever platform and method is most comfortable is probably going to be the best way to do it. And whatever your students are already comfortable with, that's going to be great. On this e-learning page, as I mentioned before, there is the learning score. This learning score consists of 8 one-week engagements, so students would spend 1 week per project. The journal goes along really well because it has 5 steps, so students can complete 1 step per day. It's up to you how you want students to move through this. I would recommend starting one of the engagements together so you have a little bit more opportunity to scaffold, to provide some troubleshooting tips, and then all the students can use each other as support. You could also have students choose from it as a menu and complete a certain number of engagements, or you could assign it in groups and have, a group of 3 or 4 kids assign to each of these engagements and then rotate through. That way they still have a small group of students to use as kind of peer supports, but they're still doing different projects. So it's totally up to you. I do want to point out that the italic indicates the technology that's being used, so Tinkercad Circuits, CookieCaster, Google Slides. Above it in bold is the system of technology. So when students log on to the Launchpad, they're going to click on Liftoff Challenges, then they're going to click on the system of technology, and then they're going to find the options for that technology. One thing to keep in mind is that this mechanics and structures engagement is an express challenge. So students completing this one will go to the express challenge node instead of the liftoff challenge node. So that may be something to help direct your students to. You could also share out the link to each specific one. So when you're on the Launchpad and in liftoff challenges and circuitry, you could simply copy the link and share it with them. So you direct them straight to that piece of curriculum so they don't get confused with navigating. Because some can get, kind of stuck here where they're not sure what to click on. But having them refer to the score or just sending them the link directly is going to help eliminate that confusion. As you implement this with your students, I would recommend sending some kind of daily instructions or reminders of what components they should be accessing, and also maybe set up a place where they can ask questions of each other. As they get started, with like Tinkercad circuits, they may be unable to figure out what one icon does or figure out how to change their shape in a certain way. And so having a place where they can ask questions of each other and get answers from each other and from you is going to be really powerful for them to continue to work independently and problem solve. So that's something that I would recommend setting up or having some kind of opportunity for students to ask each other. I would recommend setting up some kind of space where students can ask each other questions, and also then you would be able to answer questions. That way students can continue to work and problem solve through any challenges with the support of you and their peers. As you implement SmartLab learning, keep in mind that I will continue to add resources to this digital learning section. If you need any support in implementing this with your students, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email us at academics@clsonline.com, and that email will go to myself and the rest of the folks on our academic services team, and we will get back to you as soon as we can to help you with either questions or creating resources, whatever is going to be most useful to you.